think we might be live.
Hi guys, I couldn't see my computer. Hi everyone, how are you doing? So I've got something a little bit different for you today. So you know, normally I focus in on women's hormones, women's health, and we talk about progesterone and all that blah blah blah, but I've been getting lots of questions about children's health, particularly gut health. Also my sister-in-law, she's got a 6-year-old, so I'm always fascinated with how diet can affect her mood, and sometimes she's not sleeping, sometimes she's overexcited, and all of that kind of thing. So I thought this week I would team up with Jessica Donovan, get her on my page, ask the expert, because Jessica specializes in naturopathy for children and particularly gut health. Jess also has a membership program, and also Jess has a masterclass coming up that's absolutely free, and it's 3 proven ways to transform your kids' gut health to improve their behavior, fussy eating, immunity, and allergies. So I think this will interest everybody, but in particular mums out there and carers and teachers and anybody looking after children and spending time with them. So hi, Jess.
Hello, so nice to be here with you.
Good to be here with you. I'm so hot today, I need a fan. It's so nice to have you here. As I said, I've been getting, I get lots of questions, and it's great to have somebody here that we can just bounce a few ideas off and maybe get some of those questions answered. So thank you for being here today. First of all, tell me a little bit more about you. I mean, I've gone down one path. I know you help mums as well, but what's taken you down this path in particular?
Yeah, so I actually started off really focusing on women's health as well. And then when I became a mum myself, I used to see a few kids here and there, but when I became a mum myself and started going back to practice, I guess I just started attracting more kids into my clinic just really organically because of the mum groups and the play groups, and the mums within those kinds of communities would find out I was a naturopath, and really that's how I started getting back into practice after having children. And then, it was really just getting some great results with some of those kids, particularly when it came to eczema and tummy issues. And you know how it is with as a naturopath, when you start getting good results, the word spreads, and all of a sudden you've got a clinic full of the people with those same kind of issues.
Exactly.
So really, that's kind of how it came about. And I guess really becoming a mum myself helped me realize the challenges and how realistic and practical the advice needed to be for families, because there's so many challenges when it comes to building up our kids' gut health, and our families are busy and that sort of thing. So I cringe to think back of the advice that I would give to mums before I became a mum myself, that unrealistic advice.
Yes, and that's a biggie, and one of the things and this is why I like the idea of your masterclass. You've got these 3 simple strategies, these 3 easy strategies, because it's hard. You have mums, I see mums, and then they've got a few kids, and they really are trying to do the best, but they're doing their best at the expense of themselves, the stress, and trying to reach this perfection and getting really caught up in can't have, and then that's just they're getting exhausted, and that's what I see a lot.
Yeah, I see exactly the same, for sure.
So okay, so what I'm interested personally, because my niece is she's 6 turning 7 soon, and so I wanted to ask you a few questions that have come through. But what's interesting is there are things that I've just been thinking about over the last couple of years. When I see when you're watching a kid more, you just see their behavior change. You see little changes in even their face. They get a little bit pale after food, and they start getting those dark rings under the eyes. Maybe the cheeks get a little bit more flushed, more excitable, and then suddenly they have that crash. So it's really interesting when you start seeing all these patterns, but it is hard. It's hard to actually understand what's causing it, and the root cause in terms of what's happening. So I suppose the best place to start is the gut, and talk about what parents can do for the gut health of their children, especially if, say they've had children, they've been maybe sickly, they've been on antibiotics or medication. You know, what can parents do and what can they look out for? What are the other symptoms as well they might see in a child that has got gut issues other than, say, anxiety and behavioural issues?
Yeah, such a great question. And this is why I love gut health so much, because really, you know, if we, with most conditions that we see in kids these days, you know, whether it's eczema or the allergies or the behavioral issues or the mood problems, the sleep problems, the constant infections, if we can start to work on gut health for those kids, you know, a lot of those symptoms really dissipate or disappear or get resolved, because a lot of, you know, those kinds of conditions and symptoms come back to the gut. And of course, then there's the, you know, all the tummy issues that are quite obviously linked to the gut, you know, the constipation, the tummy aches, the loose bowels, those sorts of things. Yeah, and just what you were explaining before, you know, the circles under the eyes, the paleness, you know, that tells me that there's some sort of an immune challenge, and usually, you know, there's that sort of sensitive or overreactive immune system that is linked with things like food intolerances, food allergies, which of course are much more obvious, but the food intolerances and sensitivities can be much trickier to try and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, so you've got the, and it's really hard to, with young children. I mean, I don't know about you, but when you have young children in clinic, it's hard to do the testing for, you don't want to take the blood. It's difficult for really young kids. So what do you really nut down and look at the symptoms and kind of just take foods out when you need to?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know, I don't do a lot of testing with kids. I mean, I do some if it's necessary. I generally don't start with a lot of testing though, because, you know, for a few different reasons, but like you said, it can be quite traumatic for them if it's a blood test. You know, we go down that route if we really need to. But I'm really looking at the symptomatic picture and taking clues from that, and then trialing food eliminations. I'm a big fan of sort of step-by-step food eliminations for kids, because again, it can be just, you know, if we tell a mum that they have to get rid of gluten and dairy and sugar and additives from a child's diet, that's a lot, you know, it's a lot for a family to have to sort of commit to long term. And what I've found over time is that it's not sustainable. So people sort of give up before they get any results. So yeah, I mean, we looking at their symptoms, and you know, their symptoms will often tell us whether it's, you know, dairy's more of a problem, or gluten's more of a problem, or fructose is more of a problem, that sort of thing. And the other thing I just want to say about that is often, well, always, I'm working on building up that gut health and building up that immune tolerance at the same time as eliminating the food. So then we're trying to improve that tolerance to foods over time, not just eliminating the food and then sort of leaving it at that.
Okay, so that would be your number one, that building up the gut, and we'll talk about that in a bit, because I know that's what your masterclass focuses on as well. So in terms of if a parent did have a child, what would be some of the mood kind of behavioural issues they might expect to see?
So are you asking if they had a child with sort of gut issues? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
So this is such a fascinating area, you know, that whole gut-brain connection. I just find it super fascinating. And for people who don't know, you know, our brain and our guts talk to each other through the vagus nerve. The little microbes within the gut, the bacteria within the gut, are actually talking to our brain, you know, communicating with our brain, and that's affecting neurotransmitter production, neurotransmitter balance. So things like serotonin and dopamine and GABA, which help keep all of our mood nice and stable and happy, help with sleep, help with calming the nervous system. So those kinds of things, those kinds of brain chemicals or neurotransmitters can become out of balance pretty easily when the gut is out of balance. So you know, often these kids will have some tummy symptoms, and then they'll also have things like potentially anxiety or hyperactivity or, you know, mood sort of up and lots of ups and downs and tantrums and that sort of thing.
Okay. I mean, we know what low serotonin causes in adults. So, I mean, you think about that in a child. Yeah, we've got these thoughts going around and just constantly. So I suppose they would just find it hard to be able to eat concentration at school, you know, not being able to focus as much. We get, as adults, that's one of the things that's a biggie. Too many thoughts, not sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, the same in kids as well. Yeah.
And what about when children have gut issues? Have you been noticing specific minerals that are low when they've got gut issues?
Yeah, so the first one that I'm always sort of thinking about is zinc. And then iron is commonly low as well. So, you know, it's a bit of a negative cycle, as you know. If a child is a fussy eater, for example, then their mineral sort of levels will be low. That will affect their gut health and the absorption of the nutrients. And they're already on quite a, you know, restricted diet because they don't like, you know, they don't accept many different foods. So it ends up quite a negative cycle. So I think zinc and iron are the big ones that I'm often looking out for in kids with gut issues.
Do you think, I was just thinking, do you think, are children designed to be fussy eaters, or is this, what is it? Or is this just now, or are they designed to be, are they meant to be fussy so that they're not eating things that are dangerous for them? Is that, or?
Yeah, such an interesting area, isn't it? Because it's, you know, and there's a whole kind of spectrum, isn't there, of fussy eating. You know, I've got clients that will only literally eat 4 or 5 foods and that's it. And they're all very, you know, really bland foods, no vegetables, no fruits, those sorts of things. So there's a couple, you know, there's definitely a few things going on. And because we're focusing on the gut today, what a lot of people don't think about is that gut imbalance or dysbiosis can cause or contribute to fussy eating, because if there's an imbalance in the microbiome, in the bacteria within the gut, and there's an overgrowth of the pathogenic or unhealthy bacteria in the gut, then that leads to cravings for sugars, carbohydrates, processed foods, the kind of brown, beige, bland foods.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. And I've seen this kind of anecdotally in clinic. When we start to improve gut health, all of a sudden, like magic, kids start to accept a wider variety of foods. It doesn't happen overnight or, you know, in the sort of short term, in weeks, but over months, I notice it all the time. Yeah, it's quite a fascinating area.
Okay, what's the biggest food you see that kids are just really should be eating but aren't eating? What's the vegetables, the
veggies,
broccoli?
Yeah, the veggies, the leafy greens.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, you know, it's hard to get started on that path of getting more of those foods into kids when they blatantly refuse to eat them. We can't force them to eat what they don't want, and we shouldn't, you know, because then we're setting up a unhealthy relationship with food. But my big tip to parents who have fussy eaters is think about the foods that your kids do eat or do like, and you know, try and get some extra nutrition into those foods. Like, so if they like pancakes, for example, maybe start to change the white flour that you're using in the pancake batter to a spelt flour, for example.
Okay.
So very small sort of progressive changes. You know, you have to be patient with fussy kids, even though it's hard.
And do you also have recipes, maybe in your membership you've got recipes where you're hiding lots of vegetables in things like sauces and smoothies and that kind of thing?
Exactly, yes. So we have bundles of hidden veggie recipes, and another thing that we have is like a bundle of deconstructed dinner recipes. So that's like where because you know, a lot of fussy kids, they don't like everything mixed together. But some So if you serve like a meal sort of in different elements, so for example, a chicken curry, you know, you serve it's a bit more work for parents, like in the cooking sort of stage. But if you serve the chicken and then the sauce and then the vegetables and the rice all separately, and they can, you know, help themselves, encourage them to get a little bit of everything. But in that way, you can, you know, kids can kind of feel more empowered, and those sorts of recipes work really well for kids as well.
That's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. But now thinking, I remember when I transitioned I was vegetarian for a long, long time, and I started eating a little bit of meat, and I could never have it mixed with anything. I'd always have to have it separate away in this little deconstructed. That's a really good tip. I love that.
Yeah, it works really well. I mean, some kids won't even have, you know, if if their potato has touched their broccoli, they're, you know, they will
Oh,
refuse.
wow. Wow, that's hard for the parents.
It
That's
is,
why they
isn't
need
it?
those little trays. So everything's separate, the little plain trays.
Yeah, exactly.
So mood we've talked about, and then gut symptoms, and obviously a mood, I suppose with the low serotonin and, you know, gut dysbiosis, and we're looking at sleep, and then that would cause those other issues of craving sugars the next day, the blood sugar is out, because I know kids do have issues with blood sugar imbalance as well, and I suppose not sleeping or not getting to sleep till late is a big one.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is, if kids are eating sort of high carbohydrate foods in the evening for dinner and, you know, after dinner, or high sugar foods, even if they're getting off to sleep, they will often, you know, that low blood sugar dip through the night will wake them up.
Right, yes.
Avoiding those sugars and refined
Sugar,
carbohydrates in the evening for kids who don't sleep very well or wake up through the night can work really well. Focusing on the protein and the healthy fats and the, you know, veggies, if you can get them into them.
Okay, and then, well, I've noticed two foods that keep me up actually, which is interesting because one of them is a snack that kids eat a lot of, and I've known. So one is garlic. If I have garlic at night, I'm wired. And another one is I can have them in the day, but I can't have it before bed. Is the seaweed crispy snacks? Yeah.
It's got my little naturopath brain thinking. I'm like,
yeah.
oh, what could that
I think
be?
it's like a little bit of glutamate or something. It just pops that kind of neurotransmitter up for me, and I'm kind of like this at night. Fine in the morning, like morning tea, wonderful. Those are the two foods for me. Yeah, garlic, I don't know why that keeps me up.
You're not sensitive to FODMAPs, are you?
No. I mean, no, not really, no.
Have to have a little think about that one.
No, it's interesting. Okay, so keeping it simple, and I think, and I understand what you're saying before, it can be hard, and I know it's taken me a long time to really try and simplify things in terms of, especially for parents, for kids, because I know we don't want them to get too caught up in it, and also for their health to suffer. What would be the first thing parents could do for their kids, particularly if they were suspecting there was some issue in their gut, some dysbiosis, and the child was having symptoms?
Yeah, so I mean, gut health can be such a confusing and conflicting area, kind of. I mean, there's a lot more awareness coming out about it, and there's a lot more you know, well, there's just a lot more information about it. So, but that almost makes it more confusing because, you know, we've got one person saying this and one person saying that. So, I mean, my big tip is that really gut health is paramount to kids' overall well-being. So that's a really great place to start for parents. And it's really, you know, when we look at the research, it's all about the microbiome diversity. And there's still so much more research that needs to be done, but low diversity in the microbiome, so not having a lot of different sort of species of bacteria within the gut is linked with things like allergies and eczema and asthma and ADHD and autism. So all of those big childhood, you know, conditions and challenges that we're seeing so much of these days. So, you know, improving that diversity is key. And it's more than just, you know, I wish I could just give you, you know, one tip that you all must go and do, but it's really about looking at your child's sort of individual needs. Even when, and as you know, Naomi, when it comes to probiotic supplements, you know, it's not just about going to the chemist and getting, you know, the probiotic that's on sale. You know, all the different types of probiotic species have different sort of functions and you know, things that they help with in the gut. So it's really important to get some sort of professional advice and help. But yeah, working on that diversity. So probiotic supplements are, you know, can be definitely really beneficial. I prescribe them a lot. But we also need to look at, you know, feeding the good bacteria once they're in there. So if we're putting probiotics into an unhealthy environment, a gut environment, you know, the benefits are not going to be long lasting because they're not, you know, they're not going to thrive sort of while they're in there, while we're, you know, trying to get the good bugs in there. So we need to be feeding the good bacteria with lots of prebiotic fibers, and they really come in the veggies and the whole grains. So, you know, that can be challenging for parents who do have fussy eaters. But there are some, you know, some ways that you can look at getting some prebiotic fibers in. Yeah, so it's really, you know, it's getting that gut diversity. Oh, and the other thing that I was going to say is lifestyle is important as well. You know, kids are spending so much more time inside, on screen.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is a big one because outdoor play, you know, just being outside helps the diversity of our microbiome, and kids are just not doing that as much as they used to be. And I think that's a big contributor to why a lot of these issues are, you know, such a problem these days. So getting kids outside, and as a family going outside, you know, camping, even if it's just in the backyard, even if it's just to the local park, but that green
getting
time,
outside. Yes. Yeah.
getting outside. Yeah. So I think it's like important to look at it holistically, not just the probiotic supplement. And I'm going to be sort of going through the step-by-step practical strategies in the masterclass.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's one of those things, and just so people know, it's with each different probiotic and with each different strain, I mean, and family, they can help with different things, you know. And as Jess has mentioned, you know, if your child has eczema or gut problems or mood problems or whatever's going on, there will be different strains. So if you just go to the supermarket or the pharmacy and get one with all these strains in, they can actually exacerbate some symptoms. That's why it's good to get that advice. So with the food, so prebiotics, definitely feeding, so those veggies, grains, legumes, getting that all that in to feed the good bacteria. And then what about using bacteria in foods? Is that something parents can start to do? Because I know some children can be sensitive to, say, actually, I can't imagine children would ever eat fermented foods anyway, unless they were super iron deficient and they were craving vinegary foods, which is one of the symptoms of iron deficiency.
Yes.
So
yes. Well, I think there are, like, I think it's about playing around with fermented foods. It's definitely possible to get into kids, and I recommend just starting with, you know, a strand of sauerkraut on their plate, and you know, you can mix it in with other things that they're eating, and it definitely is an acquired taste. I don't know if you've sort of noticed that for yourself personally, but like my daughter's a good example. She, you know, didn't like sauerkraut at all, and I would just, you know, put a little bit on her plate, encourage her to try it, and now she spoons it onto, like, spoons a couple of big spoons onto her plate, and eats it. So I think over time that taste does acquire, and it's also about finding the right type of sauerkraut. Like, you're not going to give a child a really spicy kimchi. You've got to find the sort of milder fermented food.
Okay.
Yeah, we do a apple and dill sauerkraut. Well, I buy one from my local farmer's market, and the kids quite like that because it's got that little bit of sweetness in it. That's their favourite.
Okay, so they like that. And then I suppose things like a little bit of natural yogurt, if they can do dairy, or kefir, those kind of things will add in. If they can do dairy, a little bit of cheese, that kind of will add that good bacteria, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And things like cashew cheese that you can make, or you can buy at farmers markets. Yeah. Like little bits of kombucha, coconut kefir. Like you can ferment apple juice, for example. You can buy sort of starter cultures to make fermented apple juice. So there's definitely ways. You just need to play around and figure out what it is that your child actually, you know, likes and will accept.
Okay, and so what's going on when we've got these more chronic issues? Now, it's interesting, you touched on something earlier, and I think this is really important. I've been looking at a lot of studies recently on EMF, 5G, and how this actually affects gut bacteria, strep and staph and Klebsiella, and it can actually promote the growth. And so I think that's also another aspect. We don't want to scare people, but what's going on when there are these chronic conditions? You know, kids that are just getting recurrent parasites, or what is it? Is it the gut bacteria as well as something else that's going on for them? What do the parents need to consider?
Yeah, so generally, yeah, it's that microbiome diversity. So if we can build that up, so and I always, obviously some parasites need, specific treatment. Some even need, antibiotic therapy or herbal therapy, which can be quite tricky to get into kids because often the anti-parasitic herbs don't taste very good.
Oh, they're so bitter. I can't even one drop in a glass of water, and I'm like,
I know. So try and get that into a fussy child. It's just not going to happen. So it can be quite tricky to, to eliminate those parasites. But I find, building up that diversity within the gut does help to, to help to get rid of some parasites. Like I said, some do need more of a sort of stronger treatment. So definitely that microbiome diversity, but also often it's a lowered immunity as well. So they've got that sort of, they need more nutrients generally to power up their immune system. So their general immune surveillance is higher. So when they are coming in contact with those parasites or bacteria or virus, there's lots of kids that are getting sick all the time. They are, ready, their bodies are ready to fight it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I see it a bit, especially with the macroscopic, the bigger parasites, the worms. It can be that kind of vicious cycle just keeps on happening, and they try the combantrum, kills the worms but not the eggs, and then it's this cycle.
Yes, and so that's such that's a question that I get. I know you said, but before we were on air, you said that you get asked that question a lot. I get asked that question a lot as well. I've actually got a blog over on naturalsuperkids.com on worms.
Okay.
So yeah, people can go and have a read of that. But one, it's that gut environment as well. Like we want to healthify that gut environment so it's not as attractive to the worms. And yeah, you made a good point about the combantrum. Like I think that's a totally acceptable way to treat worms, but it doesn't get rid of the eggs. So I recommend doing another lot a week or two after the first lot.
Okay, get those hatched worms. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't know if you heard of the work that Rachel Arthur did on the chondroitin sulfate.
Yes.
Yeah, so that, and I talk about that in my blog. That's a really fascinating area that she came across this information in vet science that that animals that were getting these recurring worm infestations had low chondroitin sulfate levels. And so this is a pretty safe, easy sort of nutritional compound to get into kids. So I've been using that for those recurrent worm infections with pretty good results as well.
Oh, great tip. Okay, we'll share that blog as well. I'll point that out to people because that is a question I get a lot, an awful lot. And I think it's a common complaint, especially when kids are at school and there's little hands are everywhere.
Yes, they're not very hygienic children, are
they? Do you think I'm really interested in this. Do you think pets is a good thing for children's diversity, or do you think it's more likely to,
Yes, so there's actually research that shows that having a pet or living on a farm is actually a protective against allergies and atopic conditions like eczema and asthma, because it helps that diversity. Even though my daughter, she turns 10 tomorrow, she's a real animal lover, and she lets our dog lick her, and I'm like, oh, that's so gross. But then I'm like, well, it's helping her microbiome diversity.
Oh, that's so sweet.
The research shows that it is beneficial.
Oh, good. I'm pleased to hear that.
Are you an animal lover as well?
Yes, I am. So that's good news. Just a few people I've heard before. I've heard some different views, so I just thought, I'll ask you and see what you're thinking. But that's good. You've looked at the research. Before you came on, we just quickly talked about another question, and one of those questions was about feeling sick, and I think you answered that earlier about one of my readers emailed in, and her question was about her daughter. When she eats, she gets quite nauseous, and obviously they need to seek advice in terms of professional advice, but I think one of the nutrients you were referring to that can cause that kind of symptom can be that low zinc.
Yeah, because we require zinc for adequate stomach acid production. So if that stomach acid production isn't happening as well as it should be, then that's going to be one of the main reasons that a child is going to be nauseous when they eat. So yeah, I'd be looking at zinc. And then obviously there's other factors, but that like for the hydrochloric acid production, but I'd be looking at, stomach acid and zinc for sure.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So I think we've covered most of everything that we were going to cover in terms of the questions. That was really helpful. If I get some more, if you've got some questions, please pop some questions below, and we can answer those later on. We can answer those later on, and I'll have a look. But thank you so much. So first, before you go, your free workshop, when that's on the 3rd.
Yes, so next Tuesday night, we are holding that, and it's we're calling it a masterclass experience. So we've got the masterclass happening next Tuesday night, which, as you said, was the 3 proven ways to transform your kids' gut health. But when you sign up, you also get an invitation to come and join a pop-up Facebook group where we've got some bonus trainings happening. I'm there to support you along this kind of journey of improving your kids' gut health. And there's a really lovely community of mums in there already. So yeah.
Fantastic. So they'll get the Facebook page. That's really helpful. That'll be really helpful for them. So I'll pop the link up. It's already there. So if you want to join the masterclass, you can log on, and that's on the 3rd at 7:30, and there'll be a recording for that.
Yes, yep. So if you sign up and you can't make that time, and it's 7:30 Adelaide time, by the way, so it's 8 o'clock on the Eastern, 8 o'clock over in your part of the world. And we'll be sending a replay to everyone who's registered.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. And if people want to find you, they've got the masterclass, and then they can find you. What's your Facebook page?
Natural Super Kids.
Natural Super Kids, and that's your website as well. So if you want to look up Jess and just have a look, I'll post that blog, and so you can have a look, but it's Natural Super Kids. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to seeing some of you at the masterclass. Thanks, Naomi.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch the masterclass. It's going to be, I'm going to find it helpful. Bye.